Patricia Hearst is 19.
There's been a big kidnapping on the West Coast. The victim is Patricia Hearst, the daughter of newspaper executive Randolph Hearst and a granddaughter of the legendary William Randolph Hearst. Richard Threlkeld reports.
Patricia Hearst is 19 and a sophomore at Berkeley. She and her fiancé were in her apartment in this building near the campus last night when a woman and two armed men burst in, beat and bound her fiancé and a neighbor, dragged Patricia down the stairs, threw her into the trunk of a car, and drove off.
That's it. It was on this date. 51 years ago, 1974, Patty Hearst kidnapped from her Berkeley apartment by three members of the Symbionese Liberation Army. And then, of course, I guess later she joined.
Yeah, and they said about, what is that, what's the name? The Stockholm
Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
Yes, where you sympathize with your abductors.
And in her case, eventually joined them and ended up getting a little prison time out of that as well.
Because they robbed banks.
Yeah, they robbed banks, which is not really what you want to do, especially if your last name was Hearst.
Yes.
Okay. By the way, also on Gary Sutton Show post this morning at Gary Sutton Show on Facebook, I asked the question about Facebook. And today's the 21st anniversary of Facebook, called originally The Facebook. That was taken away, now just Facebook. And I said, has it been good or bad? Jeff Whitman wrote an interesting thing, and he said, the concept of social contact and interaction was good for many. It is an addictive obsession, for better or worse. Becoming a forum of dissent and anger and contention is the downside. All in all, though, it is a fun and interactive medium for healthy and friendly social interaction when used appropriately. Or as Mark McKenzie says, everything in moderation, ladies and gentlemen. Deb Abel said, great way to pass time and fortunately keep up with a bunch of kids. I used to coach and keep up with marriages, kids, life, etc., although the majority are moving to Snapchat, which they are. Facebook's become a little bit older medium. And then Dave Graham said it was a good thing until they went political and picked one side over another and also started censoring the side that they didn't pick. So he looked at it from a political point of view there this morning as well. So you can weigh in on that too. Go to Gary Sutton Show on Facebook. Just go in and you can search Gary Sutton Show and you'll find my show and get in there and you can see all kinds of interesting things every single day. What you will not see there every single day is Joe Decree. Major Joe Decree, retired now, veteran of Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq, has served in intelligence in Quantico. He has taught ROTC not only in Millersville, but also I think out in Montana as well. He is a guy who's now a pastor, has started a church for veterans, and he joins us every week here to take a look at the world through the eyes of a veteran, Major Joe Decree. Joe, good morning. Welcome to the show. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks a lot.
Well, it's great to have you in this morning. I want to ask you about a plethora, or as they say in the South, a mess-o subjects this morning. And, number one, under Trump coming in here, I mean, daily, you think the world is changing. But one of the things that we're seeing this week with the way he's kind of pushing the boundaries of executive power, some people are saying maybe a more imperialistic attitude was sending Marco Rubio down to try to get things a little bit better at the Panama Canal with the imposing of tariffs on Mexico and Canada, now pulling them back after they kind of knuckled under a little bit. In a day and age, we see China and Russia being relatively imperialistic. Are we seeing imperialism again on a certain front here from Donald Trump? Your thoughts on that?
I don't see it that way, but I mean, I understand the argument. I just don't care.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing wrong with the president putting his own country first. Like when did the President Obama thing? We're all citizens of the world. It's crap. I don't care. I don't care what happens in Turkey. I don't care what happens in China. I just care, what's going on with us and who's trying to influence that. That's what I care about. I'm American, and that's kind of where I'm at.
I'm kind of reminded of that old broken up snake that they used during the Revolutionary War where they said, don't tread on me.
Well, I have a different historical perspective. You might appreciate this. Queen Victoria, right, is interesting in history because literally she changed the world. Telecommunications, modern medicine practice, lots of international travel, lots of things blew wide open or were invented during what I would consider the golden age of the British Empire. Okay. And especially social manners. Queen Victoria's influence was felt all the way up probably till post World War II. Right. I think Donald Trump will have a similar influence. I think he's reshaping the globe in terms of its attitudes and manners, and because of he's not inventing telecommunications, but he's reinventing news, or causing it to be reinvented, I guess is probably more accurate, right under our noses. And news is it's nothing more than a form of communication anymore. It's not really news, and probably hasn't been. It probably never really was. You and I have gone round and round about this over the years. The whole, Spanish-American War, where, Hearst says, give me the photos, I'll make a war, kind of thing. I mean, has news ever really been news in this country? All the way back to Common Sense and Thomas Paine. It's like, it's always been to a purpose. We always have news for a fact. I think throughout our history, it's gotten a little bit over the top in recent decades. But I think President Trump is going to have worldwide influence in terms of mannerisms and the way people go about their daily business, even in other countries.
We've talked about him, and he obviously is in a moment right now where he is trying to radically change the way our government does business. And a lot of people would say, we've had waste, fraud, and abuse for a long time, and he's going in trying to make people do more with less. With the things that he's doing. As I said, he's pushing the boundaries right now, I think, of the executive branch. That remains to be seen of how far I'll go with that. But one of the areas that he's pushing the boundaries is this diversity, equity, and inclusion, all these initiatives that he has right now. And that they all came about pretty much in the wake of the George Floyd protests back in 2020 when George Floyd was killed in Minnesota. But since then, and a lot of companies knuckled under and said, we have to have diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was almost like everybody was screwing up. And it was taken from that standpoint. A lot of people took a little offense to that. And yet the pressure was so much to change over to this DEI stuff. We had every 6 months, you had to take tests in your company and you had to pass these little things. And people kind of arched their backs on it, but they felt the heat. Now we're seeing places like Target, Walmart, John Deere, who are now saying, we're putting that away. We're not doing that anymore. In fact, one of the things here from Target said, this is a quote, throughout 2025, we'll be accelerating action in key areas and implementing changes with the goal of driving growth and staying in step with the evolving external landscape. We will continue to monitor and adjust as needed. In other words, we're starting to back down. We're changing this whole thing about DEI. We're going in another direction, and we're seeing it from a lot of other companies too. Is this righting the ship? Is this evening up the playing ground again, or are we just kind of playing kind of ping pong back and forth with this stuff? What's your take on that?
Well, I think it'll end up being a ping pong back and forth between, from one administration to the next. But I think this is how, one way President Trump, I think, is influencing the planet. But what happened to, and you'll probably remember who said this, I don't, the business of America is business.
Right.
When did that go away? Well, I think it went away somewhere around the Affordable Care Act, and somewhere around Great Society and somewhere around DEI. I think we've lost it by degrees, and the business of America ceased to be business. It started being, I don't even know what to call it, DEI, I'll just say. And the notion that showed up right during the pandemic, right during all the Black Lives Matter protests, is not accidental.
Well, I think
somebody was waiting for an opportunity.
Yeah, I think the idea of we all were screwing up on the way we hired or way we treated groups or underrepresented groups and all that kind of thing was the wrong premise. And what happened was it became a judgmental kind of thing with one group telling everybody else, hey, this is the way you got to behave. And people are saying, hang on, I've been treating people pretty good for a while. I've been hiring people pretty well for a while. I take care of underrepresented groups. And the idea of putting out a blanket group memo to everybody when maybe you go to places that are screwing up and are keeping people away, maybe you need to go to them individually, but not send out a group memo. And a lot of people like Amazon, Walmart, Meta, McDonald's, Ford, Harley Davidson, Lowe's, and John Deere, just to name a few, are saying, no more. We're going to go back in the other direction now because the atmosphere is such that we can do that. Your thoughts?
Well, here's the thing. In part it's meritocracy, in part it's business, and image is everything in business, right? So I walk into company X, and I talk to a receptionist who's a 6'6" dude in bizarre makeup and bad hair, wearing a dress, trying to imitate a woman. And, I recognize that there's genuine dysphoria where people really believe that the opposite sex are more comfortable. I actually think Caitlyn Jenner has that. but on the other hand, because Caitlyn's very actually, the person formerly known as Bruce Jenner is actually very comfortable in their own skin.
Right.
Doing this. But most people, I think, are not. And so what you see, especially when men try to be women, is male caricatures of femininity. It's not the same thing. Is it a fetish? Is it just a trend? Is it like I can get stuff, I can hang out in girls' bathrooms and see naked chicks? I don't know what it is, but I don't want that as my receptionist. I don't want that to be the face of my company.
A lot of people, I'll be devil's advocate, I'll pose this question. A lot of people said DEI went over the top on going the whole other direction there. And the idea of, gender, how I identify gender-wise, the pronouns I use. We saw Friday, they knocked that out. A lot of the federal agencies' websites went away in a matter of hours. And some people would say, well, are they overreacting to the whole DEI thing there? Are there some parts of DEI that could have been kept? Or are we getting back to common sense again with this whole man and female and it's sex, and that's it? We're not talking about places for gender on there anymore. Is there a middle ground on that at all from your standpoint, Joe?
I think the middle ground is meritocracy. Be
right.
Good at something and get it. I think that whole thing was a couple things. The pronouns, it's interesting. We have PR teams, right? So if you have a problem with public image, you fix your public image, right? Unless you're, LGBTQ, in which case you have the right to demand everybody else to accept your public image as you choose, which is a fluid environment. And I now have to think about this. And it's kind of funny. I used to say this to the kids at the mental hospital I worked at, and the suicidal kids, and they're like, because they would ask me about these things, and it's like, you're now forcing me to remember, literally pronouns. Pronouns are basically categorical. We call them personal pronouns, you, me, them, all that, but they're actually just categories. Right?
Yep.
And so now I have to take categorical thinking and make it personal thinking and know what that is for every human I interact with. And if I screw it up, oh my God, I could lose my job, my livelihood, my ability to feed my family.
Yeah,
that's nuts.
Yeah, the idea that somehow all of our sentiments were bad, I think, is what grated a lot of people with the whole DEI thing. Whereas if you said, hey, let's keep looking at diversity and equity and inclusion as the way we do business on a regular basis, because that's
right.
what we're supposed to be doing in the first place, right? Final thoughts.
Right. On the one hand, you've got the Rooney Rule, in football, where, hey, and Tony Dungy said it best. He goes, it's not a race thing. It's a who you know thing. You hire who you know. Well, there weren't a lot of black coaches, so there weren't a lot of black coaches. No. So the Rooney Rule, after the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's how Mike Tomlin got hired, was, hey, at least look at this. At least consider this. And try that. So, I have no problem with that. I actually thought Bill Clinton's don't ask, don't tell was the right policy for the military.
Yeah, I thought it was
pretty
good
do.
too. Yeah, because
I actually thought, of all the, I didn't personally like Bill Clinton. I think he's a man without honor. But on the other hand, I think that was a sound policy.
Yeah,
I was a fan.
I think he had, and again, the idea, and it kind of, in a backdoor way, went to meritocracy and said, hey, you don't have to be out there. We don't go up and talk to each other and talk about sex first. And that was not, or what we do in the bedroom. Right. That's not where we go. Joe, fantastic segment this morning. Thank you for taking a run around all the things that are happening. We won't have any problem finding that buffet each week, my friend, okay?
Okay, man.
Thanks,
anytime you want.
Take care.
All right, bye.
Major Joe Decree retired now, with us here each week as he takes a look at the world through the eyes of a veteran. All here on WOYK.